light in you that you had for literature going? Who helped you believe that you were a good enough writer to take it up as a career?
At some point, I thought I could write fiction. And while I was in Dar es Salaam, there was the African and African American writers, I think the first big conference in Makerere, Kampala. And people like Mphahlele, Langston Hughes and so on, and then the younger Soyinka, Achebe, and them were there. And after the conference, Mphahlele was among those who stopped in Dar es Salaam. So I gave him some piece of writing I considered a short story, which I wanted him to comment on. And after a few days, he got in touch with me to get together to go over it. And he went over it, practically line by line, at the end of which I had no illusions. I knew I could not write fiction. And I'm grateful to him for that, because then after some time, I guess I had also, through Ruth First, learned the skills of being critical of my own writing. But until Mphahlele's intervention, that applied more to my non-fiction than my attempts at fiction. Okay, so now I had this little advantage to sober up and realize that the reason I couldn't tell stories was that I could not, when I was writing creatively, I could not think like a storyteller, that I thought in a series of images which were more natural for poetry than prose fiction.
What makes literature and poetry and your love for words still worth waking up for every morning?
I don't write as often as I used to when I was younger, by the way.
Have you become lazy?
But I think a little rusty. Old age. I think in the final analysis, if we agree that, excuse me, literary art, like any other art form, is a celebration of life as creative activity, which means then when there is interference in real life objectively with that celebration, the resistance would come from the writing too. That in that light, I think the role of writing in the different phases of struggle remains constant. So if life was ever worth celebrating at any time, it's worth celebrating at all times.
A lot of people have ways of defining who Kgositsile is, and most of the time we use your achievements and successes to define who you are. But who is William Kgositsile? How do you describe him?
I see myself as just another South African. I see myself as someone who is unapologetically, unconditionally an enemy of any kind of injustice, whether in the family, in the school, in the society at large, or anywhere else. That I would not hesitate if I had the chance to confront that injustice. At the practical level, as a social being, as a political being, and at the artistic level as a writer.
What's with the hat, though? Every single picture, ever since I was introduced to you, there's always been this hat. What's with the hat?
You know, that is weird, because I don't seem to remember myself at any point without the hat. In the same way, I don't remember myself without the beard. It's why that I guess it's become part of me.
Yeah. Never without a beard, never without the black visor hat, and never without a smile. Professor William Kgositsile, who was a cultural icon for this week. A big shout out to the African Media Resource Center of Excellence for hosting us for this interview.